I inherited a $48 million hotel, and the first person who tried to destroy me wasn't a business rival, it was my own mother. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I was never the kind of person who dreamed about wealth. I worked long hours, paid my bills on time, and stayed quiet. My life was simple, and I liked it that way. So when I got the phone call from a lawyer in Chicago, I thought it was a mistake. He asked me to sit down before telling me the news. That alone made my hands shake. My grandfather had passed away suddenly. We hadn't been close for years, and I hadn't even known he was sick. I expected nothing more than a polite update. Instead, the lawyer told me I was the sole heir to his property. Not just any property, but a luxury hotel in downtown Chicago. The value was estimated at $48 million. I remember laughing, then apologizing, because I thought it was a cruel joke. But it wasn't. The documents were real. The signatures were real. My name was there, clear as day. The hotel was mine. The shock didn't feel good at first. It felt heavy. I didn't know anything about owning a hotel, and I didn't understand why my grandfather chose me. Then one question hit me harder than the rest. Where was my mother in all of this? Linda was his only child. Logic said the hotel should have gone to her. When I asked the lawyer, his tone changed. He said my grandfather had made his decision years ago and had been very clear. My mother was not included, and she was aware of that. I didn't tell her right away. I needed time to breathe. But she found out anyway. Someone always talks when money is involved. She called me that same night. Her voice was calm at first, almost sweet. She congratulated me, said she was proud, said family should stick together. But I could hear something sharp underneath her words. When I didn't respond the way she wanted, the silence on the line grew cold. The next day, her tone changed completely. She accused me of stealing what belonged to her. She said I had manipulated my grandfather, even though I barely spoke to him in his final years. She reminded me of everything she had done for me growing up, as if love came with a bill. I tried to explain that I didn't ask for any of this. That I was just as surprised as she was. She didn't want to hear it. Her anger felt planned, not emotional. That scared me. By the end of the week, I realized this wasn't just hurt feelings. This was something darker. My own mother wasn't just upset. She was watching me closely, asking strange questions, pushing to be involved in decisions that weren't hers to make. That was the moment fear replaced shock. I had inherited more than a hotel. I had inherited a war I never wanted, and the person standing on the other side wasn't a stranger. It was my own mother. When I look back, the signs were always there. My childhood with my mother was not warm or gentle. It was controlled. Every part of my life felt like it was being measured against someone else. If another kid got better grades, she brought it up. If a cousin had nicer clothes, she pointed it out. Nothing I did was ever enough on its own. She cared deeply about how things looked from the outside. Our house had to be clean, our clothes had to look expensive, and our family had to appear successful, even when we weren't. Money was always part of her conversations. She spoke about it like it was proof of worth, like people without it had failed at life. Affection was rare. Praise was even rarer. When I needed comfort, she gave advice. When I needed support, she gave criticism. I learned early to stay quiet and not ask for much. It was easier that way. My grandfather was different, at least when I was younger. He wasn't overly emotional, but he listened. As I got older, the distance between him and my mother became obvious. Family dinners turned tense. Conversations stopped when certain topics came up. I didn't understand it at the time, but I felt the divide growing. Years later, pieces of the truth started to make sense. My grandfather had built his success from nothing, and he guarded it carefully. He believed money revealed character. At some point, he stopped trusting my mother. Their relationship didn't break overnight. It cracked slowly, over arguments about control, pressure, and entitlement. I learned that she had tried to push him into changing decisions, not just once, but repeatedly. She wanted influence over his business and expected obedience simply because she was his daughter. He resisted, and she didn't take it well. Words were said that couldn't be taken back. By the time he made his final plans, their relationship was beyond repair. He didn't act out of anger. He acted out of clarity. He believed my mother saw his work as something she deserved, not something she respected. That belief cost her everything. Understanding this changed how I saw her reaction to my inheritance. It wasn't just about money. It was about old resentment. Being excluded had wounded her pride deeply, and my name appearing where hers should have been felt like a personal attack. To her, I wasn't a son who received something unexpected. I was a reminder of what she lost. The hotel became a symbol of everything she believed was taken from her unfairly. For me, it was painful to accept. I wanted to believe she was just hurt. But the truth was heavier. This situation reopened a wound she never healed, and instead of facing it, she turned her anger toward me. That realization didn't make things easier. It made them clearer. And sometimes, clarity hurts more than confusion. After the anger cooled, my mother's behavior shifted. In front of others, she acted supportive. She told people she was proud of me and said she wanted to help guide me through something so big. Her voice sounded caring, almost protective. If I didn't know her so well, I might have believed it. She offered to help manage things, saying I was too new to understand how a hotel like that worked. She reminded me that she had experience, connections, and instincts I didn't. She framed it as a mother looking out for her son, not someone trying to take control. Still, something felt off. Behind that calm face, things were moving quietly. I didn't see it at first, but I started hearing small things. A lawyer called me asking questions I hadn't asked him to ask. An accountant wanted to review records I hadn't shared yet. A former executive from the hotel reached out, oddly confident that changes were coming. None of them mentioned my mother directly, but her fingerprints were everywhere. She began bringing papers to me, usually late in the evening, when I was tired. She said they were simple forms, just routine things needed for taxes or temporary authority while things settled. The wording was vague, and when I asked questions, she brushed them off. She told me not to overthink it and said she had my best interests at heart. I didn't sign anything right away. That seemed to annoy her more than outright refusal would have. She started using guilt instead. She talked about how much stress she was under and how hard it was to watch me struggle when she could help. She reminded me that families should trust each other. The more she pushed, the more uncomfortable I became. Her concern didn't feel like care. It felt like pressure. Every offer came with urgency, and every explanation felt incomplete. I noticed how often she talked about control without saying the word. She wanted access, authority, and influence, but always dressed it up as support. At the same time, I sensed people around the hotel questioning me. Meetings felt colder. Advice sounded less like guidance and more like testing. It was as if someone was quietly building a case against me, piece by piece. I realized then that this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a strategy. She wasn't helping me learn. She was trying to prove I didn't deserve what I had been given. That truth hurt more than her anger ever did. Betrayal is easier to face when it's loud and honest. This was quiet, patient, and wrapped in the voice of someone who claimed to love me. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I chose caution instead. I listened more, spoke less, and paid attention to every move. Somewhere inside, I knew this was only the beginning. Things didn't fall apart all at once. They slipped slowly, almost quietly, like something being loosened from the inside. I noticed small changes first. Meetings that once felt steady became tense. Decisions took longer. People avoided eye contact. It was as if confidence in my leadership was fading, even though nothing had truly gone wrong. I later learned my mother had been busy. She was meeting people without telling me. Board members, senior staff, advisors she knew from years ago. She spoke carefully, planting doubts instead of making accusations. She questioned my experience, my judgment, my readiness. She said she was worried about the future of the hotel under my care. The worst part was how believable she sounded. She wasn't angry. She wasn't dramatic. She spoke like someone protecting a legacy. People listened. Soon after, the hotel's performance began to dip. Small disruptions added up. Staff changes I didn't approve. Delayed decisions that affected operations. Confusion over authority. None of it looked obvious on paper, but together, it created instability. And instability creates fear. I felt like I was walking through fog. Every step forward met resistance I couldn't explain. When I asked questions, I got vague answers. When I tried to assert authority, I was met with polite hesitation. Someone had already softened the ground beneath my feet. The truth came to me by accident. I was walking down a hallway late one evening, reviewing notes in my head, when I heard voices coming from a nearby office. I recognized one of them immediately. It was my mother. I slowed my steps without thinking. She wasn't alone. She was speaking to someone senior, someone who had influence. Her voice was low but clear. She talked about legal options, about how ownership could be challenged if leadership was proven weak. She said it wouldn't be hard to make the case, given my lack of experience. Then she said something that froze me in place. She said she was doing this for the good of the hotel and that once I was removed, stability would return. Removed. There was no confusion left after that. No room for excuses. This wasn't concern. It wasn't guidance. It was a plan to take everything from me. I stepped away quietly, my chest tight. The realization hurt in a way I hadn't expected. I could deal with rivals, competitors, even strangers trying to outplay me. But this was different. This was family. The person who was supposed to protect me was the one cutting the deepest. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I stopped hoping she would change. I stopped believing this could be fixed with a conversation. I understood then that I was alone in this fight, and that made the betrayal feel heavier than anything else I had faced. I didn't confront her right away. I needed time to steady myself, to make sure I wasn't reacting out of emotion. But the weight of what I heard followed me everywhere. Sleep became difficult. My thoughts kept circling the same truth I didn't want to face. When I finally asked her to meet, I chose a quiet place. No audience. No distractions. I wanted honesty, even if it hurt. She arrived calm, almost confident, like she already knew why I had called her. I told her what I had heard. I didn't accuse her. I just asked her to tell me the truth. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she sighed, as if she were tired of pretending. She didn't deny it. She leaned back and looked at me with a kind of disappointment I had seen my whole life. She said I wasn't built for something this big. She said I was too soft, too hesitant, too careful. In her mind, that made me weak. Then she said the words that broke something inside me. She told me the hotel should have been hers. That she deserved it more than I ever could. She reminded me that she gave birth to me, raised me, sacrificed for me. She spoke as if that gave her ownership over everything tied to my life. I tried to explain that this wasn't about deserving. That I didn't choose this. That I was trying to do the right thing. She cut me off. She said intention didn't matter. Only power did. Her voice didn't shake. Her eyes didn't soften. There was no guilt in her expression. Only certainty. She spoke about removing me like it was a necessary step, not a betrayal. That was when it hit me fully. I wasn't her son in this situation. I was a problem to solve. An obstacle standing between her and what she believed was hers. The realization drained me. All the hope I had been holding on to collapsed at once. I felt small, the way I did as a child when nothing I did was enough. But this time I didn't shrink. I just felt empty. I didn't argue anymore. There was nothing left to say. I stood up, told her the meeting was over, and walked away. She didn't stop me. That night, I sat alone and let the truth settle. The pain wasn't just about the hotel. It was about understanding that love, at least from her, had always been conditional. Hitting rock bottom doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's the moment you stop hoping someone will choose you. After that conversation, something inside me settled. The anger was still there, but I didn't let it lead. I knew reacting would only give her what she wanted. So I chose silence. I stopped arguing. I stopped explaining myself. I let her believe her words had defeated me. When she made suggestions, I listened without committing. When she asked questions, I answered carefully. On the surface, I looked uncertain and overwhelmed. In reality, I was preparing. The first thing I did was find people I could trust. Quietly and carefully, I hired a legal team that specialized in complex ownership disputes. I also brought in forensic auditors who knew how to follow money without making noise. None of this was announced. Nothing changed on paper. Everything stayed calm. At the same time, I started learning. I didn't rely on titles or assumptions. I spent time with department heads, listened more than I spoke, and asked direct questions. I walked the property early in the mornings and late at night. I learned how things actually worked, not how they were supposed to look. Staff noticed the difference. I didn't threaten. I didn't rush. I showed consistency. Slowly, trust began to return. People who had been distant became open again. They started sharing concerns, then details. Patterns emerged. Every unusual delay, every unauthorized decision, every quiet interference was noted. Meetings that excluded me were documented. Financial movements that didn't make sense were flagged. Nothing was confronted. Everything was recorded. My mother continued moving in the background, unaware that her steps were being traced. She seemed more confident with each passing week. The instability she helped create made her believe her plan was working. I let her believe that. I kept my distance emotionally. I didn't defend myself. I didn't seek approval. I focused on facts and preparation. It wasn't easy. Staying silent while someone tries to undermine you takes discipline. But I reminded myself that clarity was stronger than confrontation. Over time, the picture became clear. What felt chaotic before now had structure. Actions connected. Motives aligned. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was watching. By the time she felt ready to make her final move, I was no longer the unprepared person she thought I was. I understood the business. I had the support of the people who mattered. And I had proof. The quiet plan didn't give me satisfaction in the moment. It gave me something better. Control. The notice arrived on a quiet morning. It was formal, detailed, and carefully written. My mother had filed a legal claim against me. She accused me of mismanaging the hotel and questioned my mental stability. Reading her words felt unreal, like they were written about someone else. She didn't hesitate this time. The claim was aggressive and confident. She believed she had built enough doubt around me to make it stick. The meetings she held, the stories she spread, the pressure she applied behind closed doors all led to this moment. When she heard that the papers had been served, she didn't call me. She didn't need to. In her mind, this was already over. I stayed calm. I had been expecting this. My legal team reviewed everything carefully, line by line. Nothing surprised them. They had already prepared for each accusation, because we had seen it forming weeks earlier. What my mother didn't know was that her moves had left a trail. The auditors had tracked unusual transactions tied to people acting on her instructions. Records showed pressure placed on staff to sign statements they didn't fully understand. Emails and meeting logs connected her directly to decisions that crossed legal boundaries. None of it was dramatic on its own. Together, it told a clear story. The claim she filed opened doors she didn't realize existed. It allowed deeper reviews. It forced disclosures. Her confidence became the very thing that exposed her. As the process moved forward, her tone changed. Questions she once avoided now mattered. Explanations she never prepared were suddenly required. The certainty she had carried began to crack. I didn't celebrate. I didn't react publicly. I focused on precision. Every response was factual. Every document was supported. There was no emotion in my approach, only clarity. She tried to regain control, but it was too late. The structure she believed would protect her began working against her. Influence only lasts when it isn't challenged by evidence. I watched the shift happen slowly. The same people who once nodded along started asking careful questions. The space she once moved through freely began to close. The trap didn't snap shut loudly. It closed quietly, the way things do when truth has time to settle. And for the first time, I saw doubt in her eyes, not toward me, but toward the outcome she thought was guaranteed. The day everything came into the open was nothing like I imagined. There were no raised voices or dramatic scenes. It happened in a quiet, formal room filled with people who spoke carefully and listened closely. Lawyers, executives, and advisors sat around long tables, reviewing documents that carried more weight than opinions ever could. My mother entered with confidence. She dressed carefully, spoke smoothly, and acted certain that she was in control. This setting was familiar to her. She believed it favored her. As the process began, her claims were reviewed one by one. Each sounded strong on its own. But then the responses followed. Records were presented showing payments that had no proper approval. Timelines revealed meetings that excluded the required parties. Statements from staff were examined and compared, showing pressure and influence that had shaped their words. Contracts were reviewed, and the attempts to bypass ownership limits became clear. Nothing was rushed. Each detail was placed carefully, like pieces of a puzzle being assembled in front of everyone. At first, my mother tried to explain. Then she tried to deflect. Finally, she fell silent. The confidence drained from her face as the room shifted. People stopped nodding. Pens paused. The attention she once controlled slipped away. Her credibility didn't collapse all at once. It eroded. Each question she couldn't answer chipped away at the image she had built. The people she wanted to impress saw something different now. Not strength, but desperation. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. I let the facts speak. My voice stayed steady when I was asked to respond. I answered only what was necessary. Watching it unfold was painful in its own way. This wasn't victory. It was exposure. The truth didn't attack her. It revealed her. By the end of the session, the direction was clear. Her case no longer stood on solid ground. The room felt heavier, quieter. She avoided my eyes. I felt no rush of satisfaction. Only a calm understanding that this moment was inevitable. Power built on manipulation can't survive scrutiny. I walked out the same way I walked in, steady and silent, knowing that strength doesn't need to announce itself to be seen. She found me a few days later. There was no confidence left in her posture, no careful performance. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight she carried had finally caught up with her. When she spoke, her voice wasn't sharp anymore. It was desperate. She blamed the people around her first. The lawyers. The advisors. Anyone but herself. Then she turned to begging. She said she never meant for things to go this far. She said I had embarrassed her, ruined her life, taken everything from her. I listened without interrupting. When she realized I wasn't reacting, her tone shifted again. She accused me of being ungrateful. She reminded me, once more, that she was my mother. She said I owed her. That if I had stepped aside, none of this would have happened. For the first time, I spoke without hesitation. I told her that family doesn't mean control. That love isn't a claim over someone else's life or work. I said being a parent doesn't excuse betrayal, and it doesn't erase responsibility. My voice was calm, but every word was firm. I told her I didn't take anything from her. Her actions led her here. I said I had tried to understand her, to give her space, but I would not sacrifice myself to protect her choices. She cried then. Not softly. Not quietly. I felt the pull of old habits, the urge to comfort her, to make things easier. But I didn't move. I stayed where I was. I set the boundary clearly. I said there would be no more involvement, no more interference, no more attempts to control what wasn't hers. I wished her well, but I made it clear that distance was necessary. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Not as someone she could push or guide, but as someone who had chosen himself. When I turned to leave, she called my name. I didn't stop. Walking away didn't feel like revenge. It felt like relief. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was done carrying a burden that was never mine to begin with. Peace came not from winning, but from choosing not to stay where respect didn't exist. The weeks and months after everything settled felt strange at first. The hotel, once tense and unstable, began to breathe again. Staff worked without fear, decisions were made carefully, and trust returned naturally. I saw the difference every day. The business I had inherited was no longer just a building or a title, it was a place where people respected each other and worked together. I learned more than management skills during this time. I learned about patience, about observing before acting, and about choosing battles wisely. Power isn't something you are given. It isn't a name on a document or a number in a bank account. Power is built quietly, day by day, through actions that earn respect rather than demand it. I spent time with staff, listened to their concerns, and made decisions that affected everyone, not just myself. I realized leadership isn't about proving you're right. It's about creating an environment where others can succeed alongside you. Integrity became my guide. I refused shortcuts, refused to manipulate, and refused to act in anger. That restraint became my advantage. Sometimes at night, I thought about my mother. I thought about what could have happened if I had reacted with rage, if I had tried to humiliate her in return. It was tempting at first, to show her that she had been wrong. But I understood something important. Revenge that comes from anger or malice only continues the cycle of pain. The strongest form of revenge is quiet. It's showing through life and actions that you are better than the betrayal you faced. The betrayal I experienced cut deep because it came from someone I was supposed to trust more than anyone. That pain doesn't go away completely. But using it as a weapon doesn't help. Instead, I chose to use it as a lesson, to guide my actions and decisions, and to strengthen my resolve. Now, the hotel thrives. I see guests happy, staff motivated, and operations smooth. What was once a battlefield has become a place of growth, for me and everyone involved. Every success reminds me that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, carries its own reward. I also learned about boundaries. Family doesn't automatically earn your loyalty if respect is absent. Love doesn't excuse harm, and familiarity doesn't justify manipulation. Protecting yourself, standing firm, and moving forward peacefully is not cruelty, it's survival and wisdom. In the end, I understand the lesson clearly. The most painful betrayals often come from those closest to you, but the quietest, strongest revenge is refusing to become like them. By acting with integrity, patience, and restraint, I turned betrayal into strength. Life gave me a challenge, and I met it not with anger, but with calm, clear purpose. That, I realized, is the kind of power that lasts.